They laughed at him. They pitied him. They whispered behind his back, saying he had become nothing, saying his life was finished. They looked at his brokenness and thought it was the end of the story. But what they didn't understand was this: when a man has nothing left to lose, he becomes the most dangerous force in the world. There's a kind of pain that strips you down to your very soul. It tears away your pride, your possessions, your illusions. You wake up one morning and realize everything you thought you were standing on, your job, your relationships, your reputation, it's all gone. And at first, it feels like death. You feel hollow. You feel like your very existence has been erased. And yet, inside that void, something else begins to awaken. You see, the world fears the man who has lost everything, because he no longer bows to fear. What can you threaten him with? What can you take from him that hasn't already been taken? A man with nothing left doesn't waste time pretending anymore. He doesn't beg for approval, doesn't care about their judgment. He's been burned in the fire, and now nothing can set him aflame again. Imagine this man. He walks the streets with empty pockets, but his eyes carry storms. He has no wealth, no support, no applause. But in that silence, he discovers something priceless: the raw, unfiltered truth of who he is. When everything is stripped away, you can finally see yourself without disguise, and that's when the transformation begins. Because losing everything isn't the end. It's the rebirth. It's the brutal reset button life forces on those chosen to rise beyond ordinary men. And make no mistake, it is brutal. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, asking, why me? Days filled with shame, failure, rejection. You think of giving up, maybe even think of ending it all. But then there's a voice inside you, faint but unshakable. It whispers, get up, you're not done yet. You're not dead yet. And in that moment, the man realizes something that changes him forever. If I have nothing left, then I am free. Free to rebuild. Free to fight without chains. Free to rise with no fear of falling. Because how can you fall lower when you've already hit the bottom? That's the dangerous power the world underestimates. They look at the broken man and think he's weak. But they don't see the storm he's becoming. They don't see that their laughter is feeding his silence. Their doubt is fueling his rage. Their betrayal is sharpening his focus. They don't see that pain is a forge, and he's being reforged into something stronger than they ever imagined. This is not just his story. This is your story too. Because maybe you've been there. Stripped of everything you thought gave your life meaning. Maybe you've felt that hollow pit in your chest, when friends turned into strangers, when love turned into betrayal, when your dreams collapsed into ashes. And maybe right now, you're standing in that place, thinking it's over. But hear me, it's not over. This is where the dangerous version of you begins. This is where the man you never knew you could be is born. The world thinks you've been destroyed, but really, you're being remade. He was broken in front of everyone, humiliated, cast aside like he was nothing. But deep inside, a decision was forming. A vow. He would not stay down. He would not let their laughter write his ending. In silence, he would rise. In emptiness, he would rebuild. And when he returned, he would return as someone they could no longer touch. This speech is about that man. The man who reached his lowest point and discovered the most dangerous version of himself. The man who realized that when you have nothing left to lose, you have everything to gain. And maybe, just maybe, that man is you. So listen closely. Let every word sink deep, because by the time we finish this journey, you will understand the dangerous power that lives inside your pain, inside your silence, inside your nothingness. He sat in the darkness for nights that felt endless. No sound, no comfort, no one reaching out a hand to pull him up, just silence. Silence so heavy it could crush the soul, and at first it did. He felt the weight of it pressing on his chest, suffocating him. But slowly, he began to realize that silence was not his enemy. It was his classroom. When you have nothing left, you learn to hear the things most people spend their whole lives running from. You hear the echo of your own thoughts. You hear the truth about your mistakes, your weaknesses, your illusions. And while it's painful, it's also liberating. Because once you've faced yourself, truly faced yourself, no one else can use those truths to break you anymore. That's what began happening to him. In his emptiness, he stopped lying to himself. He admitted his failures. He admitted his fears. He admitted the role he played in his own destruction. And with that brutal honesty, he began to carve the foundation for something new. Every day he woke up with nothing. No support, no applause. But that nothing became his canvas. He started small. Push-ups on the cold floor. Reading books under the dim light. Writing out goals that felt insane given his current reality. And yet, every time he kept a promise to himself, no matter how small, he added a brick to the man he was rebuilding. Do you understand the power of that? When the world abandons you, when they laugh at you, when they expect you to stay broken, and instead, you quietly work, quietly rise, quietly build, you are becoming unstoppable. Because nothing fuels discipline like pain. Nothing fuels growth like being underestimated. Nothing awakens the fire like being told you'll never rise again. Day by day, he stopped caring about their voices. The laughter that once echoed in his mind grew faint. The doubts that haunted him began to dissolve. He didn't need them anymore. He didn't need their validation, their recognition, their applause. All he needed was the man in the mirror. That was his enemy, his rival, and eventually, his greatest ally. You see, a man with nothing learns to fight battles most people are too comfortable to ever face. He fights against his own laziness, his own excuses, his own despair. And when he wins those battles, he becomes dangerous. Because the hardest war is not fought with the world. It is fought within your own soul. And he was winning. The gym became his sanctuary. The books became his mentors. The silence became his sharpening stone. While others wasted time chasing distractions, he was building. While others scrolled their lives away, he was rewriting his own story. And though no one noticed, though no one applauded, though no one believed, he was transforming. At first, it wasn't visible. At first, it was invisible victories. One more page read, one more rep completed, one more promise kept. But brick by brick, rep by rep, night by night, he was forging the kind of strength the world cannot see, until it's too late. And that's the dangerous power most people overlook. The man who quietly builds in the shadows. The man who refuses to complain, refuses to announce, refuses to quit. While the world is busy mocking him, he's busy sharpening his weapons. And when the day comes, when he finally steps back into the light, the world doesn't even recognize him anymore. This man had been broken, laughed at, humiliated. But instead of letting that break his spirit, he let it burn away his weakness. That's what pain does when you embrace it. It strips you down, and if you're strong enough to survive it, you rise leaner, sharper, hungrier. And he was hungry. Not for revenge, not for their approval, but for mastery. He wanted to master himself, because he had learned the ultimate lesson. The man who conquers himself cannot be conquered by anyone else. Think about that for a moment. Most men spend their whole lives chained by fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of loss. But when you've already lost everything, those chains break. And when those chains break, you become free in a way most people will never understand. That freedom makes you dangerous. He trained his mind until negative thoughts had no room to live. He trained his body until discipline became second nature. He trained his spirit until even loneliness felt like fuel. And slowly, he became something else entirely. The man who once walked with his head down now walked with steady eyes. The man who once hid in shame now moved with quiet confidence. The man who once begged for love and validation now carried himself with the weight of someone who needed nothing from anyone. And do you know what happened? The same people who mocked him started noticing the change. But by then, it was too late, because the man they laughed at was gone. In his place stood someone they couldn't touch, someone they couldn't break, someone they couldn't control. This is the turning point. This is the moment when emptiness becomes strength, when pain becomes power, when silence becomes the loudest roar. This is when the man with nothing left to lose becomes the man the world should fear. Because he no longer fights for survival. He fights for dominance. He no longer needs to prove them wrong. He lives in a way that makes their doubt irrelevant. And once you reach that place, once you realize that pain was the teacher and silence was the weapon, you understand a truth that most will never see. A man with nothing left to lose is already unstoppable. And then came the day. The day when silence had done its work. The day when pain had finished carving him into something unrecognizable. For so long he had been invisible, walking streets no one noticed, training in silence, building in shadows, carrying scars no one asked about. But that day something shifted. His eyes didn't look the same. His posture didn't carry defeat anymore. He wasn't the broken man people once mocked. He was steel wrapped in skin. Understand, this transformation doesn't happen with an announcement. It happens in secret. The world doesn't get to see the nights you spend fighting your own mind, the mornings you drag yourself out of bed with no energy, the hours you put in when no one claps for you. The world only sees the result. And that day, they began to see. He no longer carried emptiness as a curse. He carried it as fuel. Because here's the truth. Emptiness gives you clarity. When you lose what you thought you needed, you discover what you're truly capable of. And he discovered he was capable of far more than anyone believed. They once told him he'd never recover. They once believed his story was over. But now, when he walked into a room, people felt the shift. Not because he was trying to prove something, but because he didn't need to anymore. There's a strange kind of power in the man who no longer seeks validation. His presence speaks louder than his words. His silence commands more respect than their noise. The man who was once broken now moved like a force of nature. Calm, controlled, dangerous. Not dangerous in anger, not dangerous in violence, but dangerous in discipline, dangerous in patience, dangerous in the fact that he could endure what most men would collapse under. And this is the final transformation every man must go through. You must die as the boy who depended on others to believe in you, and you must rise as the man who only depends on himself. He built a body they couldn't ignore. Not for vanity, not for attention, but because strength had become his language. He built a mind sharper than the lies they once threw at him. He built a spirit so steady that no betrayal, no abandonment, no failure could ever break him again. You see, pain was never his enemy. It was his architect. The loneliness that once destroyed him now became the forge that made him. And now, the very things that once crushed him were the reasons he stood unshakable. The world came back around, as it always does. People who once disappeared now tried to return. People who once mocked now spoke with respect. People who once overlooked him now wanted to stand close, but he had changed. He no longer craved their approval. He no longer needed their recognition. He had already won the battle that mattered most, the one with himself. That's the irony of life. The moment you stop chasing them is the moment they start chasing you. The moment you stop begging for love is the moment it starts finding you. The moment you stop proving yourself is the moment the world can't help but notice. But he didn't care anymore. His revenge wasn't in showing them. His revenge was in living a life so strong, so disciplined, so undeniable, that their opinions no longer mattered. He didn't need to scream, "Look at me now." His existence screamed it for him. And that's the dangerous power of a man with nothing left to lose. Because when you strip a man of everything, and he still rises, you cannot control him anymore. You cannot threaten him with loss, because he already survived it. You cannot break him with loneliness, because he already mastered it. You cannot defeat him with pain, because he has turned pain into power. Do you feel that? That's why he became unstoppable. Not because life was kind, not because fate was fair, but because he refused to die in his emptiness. He refused to let the silence consume him. He chose to rise, brick by brick, rep by rep, day by day, until he became the kind of man this world cannot break. And now, he stands as proof. Proof that your lowest moment is not your end. It is your beginning. Proof that rock bottom is not death. It is rebirth. Proof that the man who refuses to quit will always outlast the man who never had to struggle. That's why when he looks back, he doesn't hate the pain anymore. He doesn't curse the betrayal. He doesn't wish for an easier path. Because he knows now, without the fire, there would be no steel. Without the darkness, there would be no light. Without the silence, there would be no roar. So if you feel broken right now, if you feel abandoned, if you feel like nothing is left, understand this: you are in the forge. Life is not punishing you. Life is preparing you. The emptiness you feel today is the space being cleared for the man you are becoming. One day, like him, you will look back and realize that what almost killed you was the very thing that saved you. That the loneliness that tore you apart was the solitude that rebuilt you. That the silence that suffocated you was the training ground that made you unshakable. This is the dangerous power of a man with nothing left to lose. He cannot be broken anymore. He doesn't need your validation. He doesn't fear your rejection. He doesn't care about your approval, because he has built something inside himself that no one can take away. He is no longer just a man. He is a force, a storm, a fire that cannot be extinguished. And when he walks now, the world pays attention, not because he screams, not because he demands, but because strength has a presence that cannot be ignored. Because discipline has a power that cannot be denied. Because the man who has mastered himself becomes the man who shapes the world around him. That is the final transformation. That is the journey. From broken to unshakable, from empty to unstoppable, from nothing to everything. So let them laugh, let them doubt, let them walk away, let them think your story is over. Because one day, if you do not quit, if you do not surrender, if you do not let the silence kill you, they will see. And when they see, it will already be too late. Because by then, you will have become the one thing this world cannot touch, a man forged by pain, sharpened by silence, and driven by the dangerous freedom of having nothing left to lose.